Welcome back. I would like to welcome to the stage the moderator for the next panel, Mr. Mark Zicola, Deputy Chief Information Officer, Defense Intelligence Agency, and the J2, J6 panel.
All right, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us at the 2026 DoDIIS conference. If I could please, I'd just really like to, if we could all recognize once again, the people that put this together for us. Thank you. As the Deputy CIO for DIA and for EP, the most used word yesterday, I come to this role from the operational side. Most recently, I survived as the DJ2 at Transcom, and you all had an opportunity to see what my life was like for the last year. That experience reinforced a fundamental truth. Without data, we simply cannot deliver in peacetime or in conflict. It's just basically that straightforward. From that perspective, I bring to the CIO role, making sure our technology investments actually directly enable intelligence delivery at speed and skill that our warfighters require. So having lived in that mission from both the intelligence and the IT perspective, I've experienced both sides of the equation. I know what it means to need actionable intelligence exactly at the right moment that outpaces our adversaries. I also know what it takes to build the infrastructure that makes that possible. Which brings us to our theme, DIA Next, Intelligence Technology for Battlefield Lethality. Lethality is just not kinetic. Real lethality comes from decision advantage, and that happens at the pace and intersection where intelligence meets secure delivery. When J2s and J6s are not perfectly synced, we lose our edge. Today's panel brings together J2s and J6s from across the joint force to tackle this challenge. So with that, I'd like each of my panel members to introduce themselves, tell us their current role, and if you could, just one challenge you face today.
Okay. My name is Rob Schaefer. I'm the Deputy Director of Intelligence at U.S. Space Command. So you had the opportunity to hear from General Whiting yesterday, a very voracious customer for us. The key focus that we're looking on right now, especially as it relates to data, is data integration. How do we fuse all of the complex data that's available at the right level and get it to the tactical edge as rapidly as possible?
All right, good morning, and first, thanks, Mark. I appreciate you putting me on right after General Reed. It's really fun to follow up, so let's, I really appreciate that.
Like,
you owe me a beer now, so.
Okay, only if it's an Iron City from Pittsburgh, not St. Louis beer.
Oh, no, St. Louis beer's good. See, I got my St. Louis beer socks on.
Oh, very good.
Citywide. Patrick Grimsley, I'm the J6 at U.S. Transcom. I'm dual-hatted at Transcom. I'm also the Deputy Director for Operations on the cyber side. So it's an actually interesting role. So on one side, as the J3, I get to tell myself I need to do something, and on the J6 side, with the CIO hat, I have to go do it. So, nice. But it also gives me a lot of flexibility to direct operations from the cyber side, using the tasking authority that's delegated down through General Reed. Probably the biggest challenge we're facing right now, and our priorities, is from frontier AI. So how do we take these large monolithic systems we built over the past 20 to 25 years, turn them into data-centric focused, and then giving that data to the right place at the right time for our operations team to make a decision.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Liz Storm Ruiz. I'm the Director of Command Control, Communications and Computer Systems, and the CIO at U.S. Strategic Command. So again, also thanks to Mark and the entire team for giving us the opportunity to participate as a panelist here, and also following Amber Correll this morning, which, a tough act to follow for sure.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. You've orchestrated that very well. Good job. But at any rate, within U.S. Strategic Command, you heard a little bit about our mission. The nuclear enterprise is a very unique mission with unique responsibilities, roles, responsibilities. And I've been in this position now for about 6 years, coming to U.S. Strategic Command from U.S. Transportation Command, so a broad background there. But I guess my biggest challenge right now is back to what Admiral Correll talked about this morning: data advantage for decision advantage for warfighting advantage. How do we get the right data to the right people at the right time across all classification levels, whether it's U.S., international partners, doesn't matter. How do we get the right data to the right individuals so that we can allow the president to make the decisions that he needs to make? Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Janann Swoops. I'm the Deputy Director for Intelligence on the Joint Staff. And I am grateful to be on this panel with some amazing talent. And I know it's a J2, J6 panel, but you cannot talk about J2, J6, be at a combatant command and not talk about CIO with the JWICS capability that they bring. So it's great that we have Mark here moderating with us today. I was talking to EP earlier about how masterfully the combatant commands that got brought here to talk to us today, or this week, weren't regional. It was all the functional commands. And when I really was thinking about, looking at the agenda and what that brought, what it really brought to me is like us getting data integration correct, right? From the seabed, which, I think Stratcom talked about, to cislunar, where the Spacecom commander talked about, and then globally, which SOCOM and Transcom talked about. I don't think you guys could have planned it better. So thanks to you guys, I think you really got the essence of what you were going for, so very well done to you and the team. I think when I think about the challenge that we have on the Joint Staff today, targeting is top of mind. Right? How do we get the foundational military intelligence that we need to actually understand the target all the way through kinetic or, the non-kinetic effect that we're trying to have, and then actually have that capability to see, sense make at the end of that and do it all over again. So that's what's on my mind today. So thanks, Mark.
Yeah, and again, thank you, panel members, for being here. We're going to be rewarded with a picture with EP afterwards.
Yes.
All right. So I like to do things a bit different. So I like to do a speed round, not a speed question. And what this does is I think it gives you a little more insight into your panel members. So we're going to do four questions, go right down the line, and we'll start with Rob, and we'll just continue that pace. So we'll start with you, Rob. What is the best book on leadership you've ever read?
So first, I'm going to correct Janann. We're an astrographic command, not a geographic command.
Got it. Astrographic command.
So
everybody together,
Astrographic command.
It's the established talking points of the command. I got to make sure we're consistent. So right now, I'm actually reading Master Gunnery Sergeant Scott Stalker's book, Left of Leadership, published in the last couple of months. And I think that one really focuses on the people aspects of leading and all the preparation you need to do before you find yourself in a leadership role. And that's really spoken to me.
Okay.
The best one I've ever read was It Worked for Me by General Colin Powell. I started with that one, but then I recently read Extreme Leadership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Amazing book, makes you own what you do. So I think those are probably the two that I follow right now.
Okay, good.
I can think the best leadership book I've read, and I've read a lot, but Who Moved My Cheese? And if you haven't read that book, it's all about change management. It's a quick read. You can do it in a couple of hours, but it's by Ken Blanchard, Who Moved My Cheese, and that's really appropriate to what we're trying to do today.
Yeah.
I recently read Who Moved My Cheese because I was in a meeting where someone said, oh, they moved their cheese. And I'm like, what? I don't understand that. So I recently read that. But there are two books actually that come to mind for me for leadership. One of them is about me, the leader. So message to Garcia. It really is about being able to take someone's vision and execute it without fail. And so every time I take a new job, I re-look that book and say, do I have the resilience for this? Do I know how to take someone's vision and execute it? And then for me, the leader, my favorite book is Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun. And that book is all about the Huns. How do we create an environment where our Huns can be wildly successful? How do we get them the tools they need at the time that they need it, the training they need at the time that they need it, the trust that you will be there for them when they need it. So it's all about the Huns.
All right. So no leadership challenge by Kuntz and Posner from the DIA employees. Okay. Okay. Quickly now, what book or podcast are you currently listening to or reading?
So right now I'm reading Space Shock, which looks at 18 scenarios that could potentially happen and forecasts the future opportunity, and then has a panel of experts that walks through how the National Security Council would then respond.
Okay, good. Patrick?
All right, this is going to be a little bit embarrassing. I thought about lying on this answer, but Hunger Games.
All right.
And I only say that because I've got an 11-year-old daughter that told me the movies suck and you need to read the book. So I'm reading the book so my daughter cannot yell at me anymore.
Nothing embarrassing about that.
Sounds like the Harry Potter series and my kiddos were coming up. The book I'm reading right now is Advantage. And what Advantage talks about is the importance of taking care of the workforce and how we get the most out of our human capital workforce. And that's going to be, as we go forward and navigate this huge period of change we've got, trying to make sure that the folks who are maybe a little bit more seasoned employees realize that they're not left behind, and giving them the comfort factor to let them to continue to contribute, and welcoming the new employees into the workforce and trying to get the best out of all of our employees.
So I'm not reading anything right now because when I get off work, my eyes are already crossed from all the intel that I've been reading throughout the day. But I listen to a couple of podcasts. Anything about China. First thing I do, I go to Spotify in the morning and I'm like, did anything drop about China? And if not, I'll go to, some old standards. I really like China Power. I like Freakonomics. But yeah, I'm not reading anything right now.
So we could take the Intel analyst out of Hawaii, but we can't take the analyst out of China.
There's a hope that I'll, maybe end back in Hawaii.
Right. Okay, so for me, it's Genesis. It's Kissinger's last work. So that's pretty good. So you're welcome. Reading list brought to you by J2s and J6s. All right. In one word, what is your toughest challenge with implementing AI in the workforce?
I think the toughest challenge for us is adoption. It's figuring out how to properly use it, how to do it in the right enclave, and give it the access to the material that it needs in order to help support our decision making and drive that decision advantage.
Trust.
Okay.
Resourcing.
I think trust. Trust in that when we get it to them, we're going to get to keep it for a while. That we're not going to make them train it and then bring something on, in days later. So how do we build that trust?
Yeah. For me, trust also. Yeah. Okay. Final question, and we'll get on to the heavy-hitting stuff. If you could instantly download one new technical skill directly into your brain today, what would it be?
It'd be to be able to speed read and retain.
Okay.
Prompt engineering.
There we go.
I think it would have to be software-defined ability to use your AI and to be able to leverage all the data very quickly to draw those connections between the data and the AI capability that you want. So basically making AI more effective, more efficient, and quicker.
I want someone to teach me how to build my own AI agent for any problem I have during the day.
All right. Tom Baker, please see Janann after this meeting. For me, I would like to download EP's brain into mine. So, all right. Let's get on to the questions that brought us here today and get to some more depth for our audience. Let's start off with a look at Epic Fury. So, Epic Fury and the Southern Board represent two extremes we face today: contested environments and massive interagency data integration. For our J2s, how do your data priorities shift from peacetime to conflict? I've heard swivel chair. And J6s, how are you architecting networks to secure and handle both? And if we could start with Patrick and go down the line back to Rob.
That's not that line. It starts over there. So from Transcom, I think General Reed gave you a good example of how he sets the globe to set the theater. So in the case for Epic Fury and Southern Border, the size, scale, and distance was really the difference of it. So the same data, the same things, we're moving all those things in different places. For Southern Border, it just happens so with 85% of the Joint Force located in the continental United States, it was a lot shorter of a drive. From the Epic Fury side, though, it was really shifting resources out of the Southcom AOR and moving them very quickly into the CENTCOM AOR, building up that force to give the president options. I think the hardest thing is that we have to make sure that that data is available to the operators. From a Southern Border, it wasn't as hard, so we didn't have as much pace. It wasn't everything going crazy within the operations side. When we went to Epic Fury, now all of a sudden our operators are working 24 hours a day. They're working long hours. They're trying to figure out how to make things easier. So in coordination with across all the different JDRs at Transcom, we stood up a DoRAT team. It's basically a rapid analytics team that could take everything that we have, pull the data using our data engineers, using our Maven smart people, pulling those together, looking and working with the operators on the operations floor that says, how can we make your life easier? So those teams were able to start turning questions that General Reed would have in the O&I in the morning to an output the next morning. And they basically completely evolved off that, taking all the different data streams that we had, finding the authoritative source. If we didn't have the authoritative source, what was the best source that we could provide the information to General Reed that then was pushed out to CENTCOM and ultimately up to the Joint Staff and the President.
All right, I'll tell you just from between Epic Fury and the border, for us at STRATCOM, it's pretty much the same. Because you heard Admiral Carroll talk about the nuclear force being the ultimate backstop. So we've got to make sure that our nuclear forces are trained, ready, and ready to go 24/7, 365. And we train to that with over 400 exercises a year. So the team was already there. The communications, the architecture was already in place. We didn't have to adjust the architecture at all for that strategic nuclear mission. But what we did have to do is, from an Epic Fury perspective in particular, was that there was a lot more focus on OPSEC, tremendous focus on OPSEC for us for Epic Fury, and so therefore a very small number of individuals were able to participate in that conversation. So unlike Transcom, where you were able to set up an OPT across the staff, for us it was a very small niche group, not only at headquarters U.S. Strategic Command, but in the theater and with our components as well. So that gives us a whole different set of challenges, being able to crunch the data advantage for decision advantage that Admiral Carell and others need to be able to see where the forces are at what time, tracking things like munitions, force readiness, those types of things during the heat of battle for Epic Fury. So a lot of working at multiple classification levels, and you'll hear that going forward. How do we get data advantage for decision advantage? It's all about the data at multiple classification levels with our allies in a very, very, very quick method that was required for Epic Fury. Southern Border, certainly we support the Southern Border, but for us it's really along the lines of whatever NORTHCOM would like us to support down there with the bomber aircraft. So, but not a lot of architecture changes needed on our part at all.
I think from the Joint Staff J2 perspective, the first thing I would say is that we actually can't afford to distinguish between competition through conflict. And all of your commanders talked about it, right? Right now we're in a globally integrated fight. And so how do we think about data from that perspective? And so we think about that a lot on the Joint Staff. I think from the Epic Fury, what we learned is there are countries that we can roll up on and kind of figure it out. It is not how we want to do business. We want our foundational military intelligence to be there and for us to be able to plan off of that. But we at least learned that, and I think we need to take that and think about when we have an adversary that we can't do that, what are those things we need our data to be able to do? We need it integrated, we need it automated, we need it faster, and while this is a J2, J6, we need that across all the JADER staffs that we're on, right? So we need the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6 to be able to talk together and share data. And we need to be able to do that very, very rapidly. All the commanders have talked about the advantage. If we have data advantage, then we have decision advantage, and then we have warfighter advantage. But we need that not just, horizontally, we need it vertical. I mean, there are some partners that we have that we need to be able to share it on a telephone all the way up to the highest classification. And how are we thinking about that? And so I think when I think about data and I think about the continuum of conflict spectrum, we've got to be able to share it fast, speed and scale, automated. We need it to make some decisions for us too.
Yeah.
So I think I'll build on Janan's piece. Speed, the speed of relevance in order to inform decision making, really key for us. The other piece, and it's been talked about already, is resilience. I think what we learned in Epic Fury was, while we've never had a day without space, that space capability is enabled by terrestrial assets and the link. And the loss of terrestrial assets, those landing zones, those link capabilities, we need the resilience to be able to redirect, to be able to prioritize, and to be able to refocus in order to get that data where it needs to be at the time it needs to be in order to deliver that decision advantage.
I gotta maybe make another point. So
please.
Along the lines of resilience, if you're going to have a system of systems like we have to have at U.S. Strategic Command, where you have to have 24/7, 365 support, you're going to have highly available systems, and sometimes your systems as a singular system aren't going to get there. So it's very important, I think, for all of us to look at our PACE plans, our primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, and those types of things. It's important. Just like you can't grow your workforce in the middle of a crisis. You can't grow your PACE plan in the middle of a crisis. So I talked about the exercises that we focus on multiple hundreds of times a year, but a lot of those are to practice our PACE plans and how are we going to be able to function if space isn't available or if terrestrial isn't available. And it's not just the transport. What if the data's not available? There's a huge push going toward cloud, right? Well, what if for whatever reason, a particular cloud location is available? So we focus a lot at Strategic Command on PACE plans, looking at from a resilience perspective, how are you going to operate in a day without space or in a day without, undersea cables or whatever it is. So just another thought as we look at resilience.
I remember when I was at Transcom, General Reed always asked us to look at our PACE plan, but start with the E.
Start with the E.
Right.
Start with the E, right? And I know from a DIA perspective, you heard from the boss yesterday, that highway, right, to get you that data, to provide you the means to get what you need out to the warfighter.
Right.
Great. Thank you. Let's move on to another question. We'll talk about interagency and coalition sharing, very near and dear to my heart, as I demonstrated yesterday with my Five Eye partners on stage. Epic Fury and Southern Border highlight our need to share data with allies and interagency partners. For the whole panel, how do you move past swivel chair integration to a true mission partner environment, and how do we overcome the self-inflicted wound of overclassification? And Liz, if we could start with you.
Sure. So we've been talking about mission partner environment and now coalition information environment for a while. And I think, I think that as we look at how we're going to be able to communicate with across the board with our allies, and when you absolutely need to do that, we need to get on with it. It's not just a technology challenge; it's also a process challenge. There are certain things that can be solved by technology challenge only and overcoming technology opportunities. But I think in order for us to be able to satisfy this, we've got to get toward a blended solution of technology plus some processes to be able to get after it. I know that the space environment really did that very well when they brought coalition partners into the Space Operations Center several years ago. So it can be done, and we've got precedent for doing that. The other thing to the overclassification, I really enjoy the comment about classification, security classification guidance, and looking across the board, maybe using some AI to look at security classification guidance for all of our various systems. You can't look at overclassification without understanding how things are classified. So if we were able to look at the security classification guidance of multiple systems across the board, understanding where the disparities are, resolving those disparities, and in the future, really looking at what we, from the time that the systems are designed, what's the security classification requirements, knowing that we are going to go to war with our allies, as Admiral Bradley talked about yesterday. We never fight alone. So how do we do it? Not why we can't, but how can we? And I think sometimes as I hear a lot of it as C4 IT professionals, well, we can't do that because. Well, maybe you can. So we need to determine how we get to yes as opposed to why we can't.
Thank you.
So Mark, before I answer this question, I'd like to slip something in. Admiral Bradley yesterday really kind of had me like thinking about classification guides. And then I leaned over to EP and I said, hey, you know, when we type out an email and you have to classify every paragraph, how come when I hit send, it doesn't just automatically classify that email for me? So I just wanted to slip that in before I talk about.
So thank you for the tipper of a task I have on Monday. I appreciate
Yeah, I'm just, you know, if we're trying to get things done, I thought I would slip that in. But I think when I think about interagency and the coalition sharing, and I think about non-traditional partners, you know, having sat out at PACOM, I think the first thing is trust, right? Folks aren't overclassifying because they want to overclassify. There's a nervousness, right, to handling the data. When you come into the intelligence community, from day one, you're taught, hey, you've got to protect the data. And so I think, you know, part of it, we got to continue to educate. We have to make sure our teammates that we're bringing up understand that we will not fight alone. We haven't fought alone. We will have our partners there. You know, I mean, you would think at this point in time, our Five Eyes would be easy, but even that's challenging. And then when I think about how do we share, you know, the law enforcement, you know, with our Blinn folks, I think we have a challenge, but I think it's bringing together, like, not just the intelligence side, but the operational side, right? We don't really, on the intel side, we don't do SCGs, right? We have other classification guides that we use. And when we're looking at blue and red data, a lot of our teammates don't understand how we bring that together. So how do we trust and train that, hey, you know, we need to get this so we can share because we won't fight alone? I actually don't know the answer to this one. I think about it a lot. But I think some tools could help. And, you know, if I get taught how to build that AI agent, I'm going to take this on to see if I can help the community.
Awesome.
So I think from a space perspective, you hear the commander talk about space as a team sport, and it's just the way in which we need to operate. The thing we haven't talked about yet, obviously, we're looking at that Five Eye piece. For us, it's Seven Eyes with Multinational Force Operation Olympic Defender, so the Five Eyes plus France and Germany, and that's how we approach space operations. But the piece that I think for the room here is the commercial piece. There are so many things that our exquisite sensors and capabilities can deliver that have those policy restrictions on sharing. But if I'm able to purchase that data commercially from a commercial sensor, there's a much lower bar to sharing. And so it creates a phenomenal opportunity. And in many cases, we can tip and queue from exquisite to commercial, which allows for more rapid transmission and support with our partners. We also have a commercial integration cell that enables us to do some of that work directly. But how do we do that in a more persistent and consistent way? I think the other piece to that is some of the tools that we're both using, funded by the agency and funded by USWINS for automating portions of the foreign disclosure process. And so my team's been really active in that space. How do we do that more rapidly? How do we walk through the policy pieces in order to enable that so that we can understand what it is that we want to share and do it very quickly and remove some of those barriers and restrictions?
Thank you.
First, on Liz's point, we always said no but. I'm a security guy, came up in cyber operations. Everything was no but.
Yeah,
Then I became the
absolutely.
J6 and I figured out really quickly
Yes,
that
sir.
it's yes, but.
Yeah.
yes, but. So that's what we're trying to do, or yes, and. So the swivel chair, classification, I love the J2s. I love our intelligence community. I think their default setting is TSSI no form, and they send every email on JWICs.
Guilty.
It makes it very difficult. General Reed hit the point earlier. We're talking about mission partner environments. Well, Transcom's mission partner is our fourth component as well. So we have commercial industry that is moving everything across the globe. When it gets down to the data layer, how do we share that information? How do we share what they need to know so that we keep them safe? We keep them out of harm's way when they're in an operation. But also, how do we make sure that they're able to execute the mission? Because we may shift and use a lot of the military capacity. The rest of the globe still has to keep operating, so we'll shift that over to the left. If we're moving into a PACOM AOR, now I need to share all that data with a bunch of different partners than if I'm in the CENTCOM AOR. So if you go back to the left, we did our mission threads. If anybody have met with General Stanton, you've heard mission thread 1,000 times. But mission threads, we built them out over the last 3 years, and they're focused on all these different individual systems. So some of them may have 55 different systems that all take pieces and parts of data and put them in there, and they're all part of how we move and do things. It's overly complicated. As we work on our digital modernization journey and we do our next mission threads, it's going to be focused on the data. And if you build the data at the beginning, use an API economy, you sit there and you tag the data and say this is what the classification is it correctly to begin with, it makes it much easier to share that, and that's from a logistics perspective. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important with your mission, that cross-domain solution that we want to develop for DIA is a common service for the enterprise as they build out different apps, or how you're using it, that we have that standard that we can deliver it faster down, because we get it. The warfighters on SIPR, for you, you're very unique because the majority of what you do is out there in the clear on the unclass network.
Our warfighting network is the NIPR.
Right. So it was very interesting. So thank you all for that. All right. Next question is about securing AI. Tom Baker did not give me this question, but I'm sure he will appreciate it and probably owes me a beer for this one. And if you don't know Tom Baker, please reach out to him. He's our AI officer that we brought here with us. So agentic AI speeds up analysts, but introduces some zero trust vulnerabilities. Okay, for our J6s, how are you securing AI agents as non-person entities on your networks? And for the J2s, where is AI actually delivering a measurable operational advantage today rather than just being a talking point? And Janan, if we could start with you, please.
All right. So I think if I look back on Epic Fury and think about targeting and some of the capability that's coming online in AI and helping, I think I could say that's where it's delivering some capability, bringing data to us quicker, helping us actually do, target systems analysis. Are we there yet? We're not, but we're getting there very rapidly because we're able to take the lessons learned out of Epic Fury to actually do that. Where I'd like to take the conversation with this question, though, is where it can go, right? From foundational military intelligence through the targeting cycle, the development of a target systems analysis, more quickly being able to identify not all the things I could hit, but that one thing that we could hit, whether kinetic or non-kinetic, that would actually, render the adversary incapable. I think we have the technology to do that today. We just don't have it at the hands of where we need it and at the zero trust piece of it. But then if I continue through the targeting cycle and I get to where we've actually had a kinetic or a non-kinetic effect, having the capability to very quickly understand what that effect was. Did we actually kill the thing we meant to kill? Did we actually render the thing that we wanted to render incapable? And that's where I'm actually incredibly excited about bringing on the AI. I think the other piece of it is collection, right? How do we have, the technology that actually, once I put the requirement in, everything is automated. It goes out, it collects. Did it actually satisfy the requirement? Without a human in the loop, it should be able to retask, reprioritize, and that then feeds back into the targeting loop. So.
Yeah, this a good perspective for industry to listen to, see how they can help us with that. And thanks for highlighting the next, right? I appreciate you pivoting on that. Rob.
All right, so I think for us, we look at, first we talked foreign disclosure, and that's an area that is an easier, discrete policy focused that we're looking at. I think part of it is also the data wrangling. It's correlating data that we've fused from multiple sources across networks that's trusted and authenticated data coming from either commercial partners, coming from exquisite sensors, that we're then able to use the tools to help us understand, to help us identify and point us in the direction of the signal and the noise. So it's that critical factors analysis. Where are those critical areas that we can identify and hold at risk in order to enable our operations? And I think as we navigate through that, those are the types of opportunities that we're looking for. You mentioned collection, and I think as we look to bring on the new high capacity T2EA or HCF constellation, which is already partially in orbit, it brings an immense amount of capability. I think the thing we haven't really thought about yet is how do we do the PED, the processing, exploitation, and dissemination. And that's a phenomenal area where we can use agentic AI to help us look at the changes that are occurring, because I don't necessarily need to produce everything that's been collected. I don't need to disseminate everything that's been collected. What I want to look for are the patterns, the anomalies, and the changes that we're able to then use to refocus that human on the loop who's going to make that determination or decision to execute.
Good, thank you.
All right, securing it. It's easy right now because we don't have any agentic AI that I have to secure. So zero trust, I think if you go back to the heart of what zero trust is, it's about logging and constantly revalidating authentication. Once you start creating the non-person entity accounts for the AI agents when we have them that are actually running, if you've built zero trust out correctly and you have the logging and you have the automation and orchestration that's built into that, then you give that the trust that it is who it is and it's not doing anything out on its own. I think the bigger piece is how do we start building out the agentic AI that's actually doing the defense of zero trust. So I think that's what's next is how do you take all of these frontier AI models, the open source capabilities, how do you get away, how does the department build out the capability so that I don't have to have a person that is defending the network and has to go at a person speed? How do I get to that AI speed to go against AI? And the joke is, you know, everyone has a Scott, everyone has a Garrett, everyone has a Sherry. And it may be the Intel analyst, it may be a cybersecurity guy, but everyone in your head goes, yep, I know that person. How do you take them and build these agentic AI models and use the smart people with industry, use Silicon Valley, bring them into the department, bring your very smart Intel analyst, your very smart cybersecurity analyst, and let them train the model. So now I can use a force multiplier of AI that has that intellectual property that they know, the internal and the external, they know every piece that's going on in the network. How do you take that to build the next level and then turn the AI agent on as a defense?
Very good. And another challenge to our industry partners on how we're going to get after this. Thank you.
Right. So Patrick went exactly where we're trying to go at Stratcom is implementation of zero trust, right? And really understanding where the models are, when the last time a model was particularly touched, forming a registry to start with, just to understand what we even have out there. There are so many well-intentioned individuals who've been helping us. But we've got to have a registry. We also have to have some methodology of tracking access to that, whether it's some kind of credential and access management capability. And by the way, for us at U.S. Strategic Command, a lot of times we take our cue from DISA. So DISA is putting in place many enterprise capabilities. And we at Stratcom, we're all over enterprise capabilities. Why wouldn't you be if somebody else is going to do it for you? Unfortunately, the Stratcom mission set doesn't allow us to take advantage of those enterprise capabilities for some of our niche systems that we've got in place at multiple classification levels. So how do we implement zero trust on and leverage the enterprise capabilities that DISA is going to be putting in place, both for unclassified and classified capabilities? And then how do we correlate that with zero trust capabilities for some of our higher classified systems? So that's one area I wanted to talk about. But the other area Patrick kind of mentioned also is how do we troubleshoot? How do we better understand where the shortfalls might be in our system? You know, right now, there's a huge push towards leveraging that Palantir systems, Maven Smart systems, putting all of the data, many datas and many classification levels in that. But are we really confident in the security of that system? How do we know? Can we use some kind of agentic AI models to be able to convince ourselves that we are in fact secure as secure as we need to be? And how do you actually troubleshoot? How do you map your network so that you understand if particularly if an authorized service interruption must be done to do a patch, and by way we are going to do patching. We are going to do patching, so we must take systems down. What does that correlate to? What does that impact? Do we really know what that's going to impact from a mission perspective? So those are the kinds of things where I think we're going in the future, is leveraging AI capabilities in a secure mode, leveraging zero trust to be able to understand who's actually accessing those AI capabilities, making sure that they're secure and leveraging them for operations, as well as intelligence and targeting. But how do you leverage that moving forward?
Yeah. Mark, could I add something to what Rob said? When we talk about collection targeting and PED, I think Rob and I both want that from open source to the exquisite. We want to share it both vertically and horizontally. Right. So when we think about DIA next, if we could just take a note on that as well.
Okay, good. Another tasker for me for Monday. Thank you, ma'am. But Liz, I want to just, one of the things you talked about that just registered with me is that patching, right? So we struggle with DIA because we support all the combatant commanders, right? And how do we do our patching when you have multiple engaged in major combat operations or preparing, but you do it every day with your system and you figure out how to do that, and I'm just amazed when I think about that.
Well, I will tell you, when we had the initial Russia-Ukraine conflict, we really struggled at that point in time. How are we going to do patching? And there was the original thought was we're going to just stop patching. Well, because of necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we created a process at Stratcom, not enabled by AI, but enabled by well-intentioned Americans who are looking at each and every authorized service interruption. We have a whole section of team that does that. But being able to automate that is where we need to go. Being able to automate what, the correlation between a particular action, just consider it maintenance. If you didn't do maintenance on your weapon system, if you didn't do maintenance on your aircraft or your submarine or picket, you wouldn't be able to have trust in that system moving forward. So that's how we approach patching. It's a method of doing maintenance. We must do maintenance, and we will figure out how to get to yes and not why we can't.
I think I'll piggyback on that a little bit. The past 20 years, security has been a side note. Right. We haven't patched. It's the culture that we have. The system has to be up. You can't fix it. You can't do any of this. I think you really, over the past 2 or 3 months, you've hit that strategic inflection point where you have to security. It's cost, schedule, performance, and security. Right. So now you're actually seeing at the leadership level that's saying, hey, why can't I need to have this system up. If an adversary can take out that system because of vulnerabilities I didn't patch, now you're getting the top-down driving, and it's actually occurring. I think you've seen the speed at which we can patch now is actually getting better, and it's been because the security of it has been highlighted. Yeah.
Well, and part of that, quite frankly, is underpinned by your PACE plan. Right. So if you have confidence, you know that you can take down a particular system to patch it or to do maintenance, and you know you've got a backup system or an alternate process to accomplish the mission. That's how the correlation between PACE planning and maintenance really worked across the force, to include now cyber. But that's been a situation I think we've had across the Joint Force for decades.
Right. And I think I talked about this a little bit yesterday, right? How in the Department of War, our threes and others, want to break things, right, and get after things, and cyber defense has not been the sexy thing, but now I think the rest of the world outside the 6s and 2s are seeing us as a weapons delivery system.
Right.
So that's good. All right, let's move to, we have one question, and we might have a chance for an additional question for you all to highlight something at the end here. But before we get to that, the magic wand question, right? So our adversaries innovate at machine speed while we fight bureaucracy, right? If you had a magic wand to change one specific policy holding you back as a J2 or J6 that's getting in the way of your synergy, what would it be? And I'll start with you, Rob.
So my J6 would say he wants more privileged users on COE so that he can actually modify and manipulate the system. But I think for us, it's more about transparency and communication. So we have to have a better understanding. For us, we're geographically separated, 30 minutes apart in different areas of Colorado Springs. While IT is great, there's something really to be said about walking around and getting next to each other and having those deep conversations about what are your requirements, where are the gaps, where are the restrictions, where are we exercising redundancy that is unnecessary, or does it provide resiliency? I think in a lot of cases there, we're using what we've always had or what's always been, and we're not necessarily innovating at that same speed because we're working through that challenging process. As we look through supply chain risk management, that it becomes a partnership, not a, you told me I can't buy this. It's the, hey, this isn't really safe or secure to bring into the network situation. So I think that's probably what I'd be looking at is it's actually flattening the communications, which you'd think would be easy, but becomes more challenging.
Mm-hmm. Especially where you have your dispersed workforce all throughout Colorado Springs.
And now in Huntsville as well.
In Huntsville, right. Okay. Patrick?
The RDT&E process.
A little more, please.
So here's my process. I have a requirement gap. I have something I want to solve. So I write a paper up. It goes into this process. It gets kicked out. A year later, I get proposals back. I look at those proposals, I down select them, and then it goes back into the process. Another year later, now I get to do a test with them. So then it comes back 5 years later, industry has already built what my requirement was, and they've had it for 3 years. So how do we get more into the test and evaluation and less in the research and development? I think we put the requirements on the industry. The industry will come up with solutions, and then we need to be able to implement those solutions. And we have to do them fast. I think that's where Transcom has a unique ability because of the way we're set up. I have delegated authorities from General Reed as an authorizing official. So as long as I tell him what I'm accepting risk on, I can put something into his networks. We have the funding tail because it's a working capital fund. So the funding is the piece that I have to go back. I work with the J8 and I can get that. I have the CIO, I have the cybersecurity team, the SOC that actually does all the monitoring, defending of our space. We own our environments. So when I told General Reed, he's like, what do you need from me? I was like, sir, I've got everything I need from you. If we fail, it's my fault.
All right, very good. No, that's great. Liz?
Let me just approach it from just a little bit different direction. So what policies do I need relief from? I think you may have gathered from some of my remarks, we figure out how to get there. So, I mean, we could certainly take a look at policies and policies we need to overcome and fight the policy wars and go to the Pentagon. I love the Pentagon. However, the policies are the policies. So if we put our energy in figuring out how to get to yes, then my experience and our experience has been we're going to be a little bit more successful in doing that. So let me give you a couple of examples. Admiral Correll, he didn't mention it up here, but Admiral Correll is also the NC3 Enterprise lead. That is another authority that he has for the Nuclear Command Control Communications Enterprise, which is a system of systems of unique C4 IT systems, about 179 of them, which the services operate and fund on behalf of U.S. Strategic Command. Now, when it comes to making sure that those systems are suitable for the mission, Admiral Correll has authority to direct the services to either adjust the system, he advocates for the requirements directly to the services. So in that respect, it's a little bit of not the standard requirements process through the Pentagon, but it's an accelerated process and it gives Admiral Correll the authority to not only set requirements, but also ensure that the systems are functioning to support our operations directly. So he has that direct link. But the other thing I'd say is back to we do a lot of pilots at US Stratcom for that exact reason that Patrick was talking about, because it takes so long with the requirements process. So how do we get from the challenge of a pilot or actually implementing a pilot past the policy people that say you can't do to be able to actually implement the pilot? Well, part of it is figuring out how to get to yes. Sometimes it's not just the technology of the pilot, but it's also tactics, techniques, and procedures with the pilot, and then transitioning that to a program of record. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, is quite frankly getting a program across that hump to transition it to a program of record, but not necessarily not necessarily developing a capability, but getting it to a standard repeatable process.
Thank you.
So I think about this one very differently. I was blessed to be the policy chief at DIA, and so I understand that the written word can be changed. We own the policy. Honorable Lucas talked about it yesterday, that the administration was very clear. If there is something standing in your way to be able to do your job, you need to bring it up, to change, to make that change, to have that conversation. The other thing, I think we self-limit ourselves in policy. I have folks tell me all the time, well, we can't do that, it's in policy. I'm like, well, do we own it? Yes, ma'am. Okay, then let's see what can we do to your point to get to yes, right? And so I think one of the things we have to do is just have a mindset change in that policy, right? Is it law, which can also be changed, just a little bit harder? But if it's policy, we just need to take the time, have the conversation with the right people, making sure the decision on the no, we can't move a thing is at actually the authority of the person who can make that decision. And I think we just have to push the envelope on policy right now, because I think, at least in my career, this is probably the first time that I have heard from the highest levels, if something is keeping you from being able to carry out what you have been told to do, let's see what we can do to change it.
Rob, as the follow-on to Janan and SPP, do you want to add anything to her comment?
He agrees.
All right, then.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Janan. It's that reality that so much of what we do is policy constrained. It's not fully constrained. And so if we stay in those boxes that we've drawn for ourselves, we're not going to innovate in the way that we need. And in those conversations that we're having, those policies existed at a set time for a reason. But if there's opportunity to change them to drive us towards higher levels of effectiveness, if it gets us to that battlefield lethality that we're aiming toward and helps us to operate more coherently as a joint combined force, then those are the opportunities we need to take advantage of now.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right, we have before I close this out, we have a couple minutes left. I'd like to give an opportunity for each of you to take a couple minutes for any last words of wisdom for our Intel folks, our IT communicators, or our industry or academia partners. And we'll start with my battle buddy on the end, Ms. Janan.
Wow. I think over the last day and a half that I've been listening to the commanders speak and to General Adams on what he has for vision for the DIA, I'm incredibly excited to be part of this, right? Change is afoot, and we have the ability, I think we have the right decision makers in place to effectively set the course, for the warfighter, for the intelligence community, wherever you sit, to really posture ourselves for the adversary, for a pure fight. I'm excited about that. I think, we have the talent, the automation that's coming online looks a lot different, because we've been having some of these same conversations since 2007, right? And now, no kidding, the technology is in place. The right folks thinking about it, I think, are in place. I'm humbled by EP and you, always talking to me about what we can do, when I call and I have a problem, whether it's with, my WAN or my LAN, hey, these are the things I can bring to you. So I'm really excited. I think that we will be able to fix the targeting challenge that we have before us. I think we can do that with the collection. I think we got to think harder about the PED, right? But with an automated agent telling me what actually needs to be PEDed versus what I think needs to be PEDed, I think the world is just full of opportunity right now. I'm just excited to be part of that.
Yeah, and challenge accepted.
Well, targeting, collection.
Yeah. We're going to get out. We are going to get after it.
Right. The challenges and the opportunities are the same.
Yeah, we're going to get after it.
But we're going to get after it.
Liz?
I think I think it's all about the partnerships. It's all about the communication. It's all about the teamwork. It's all about the partnerships, whether it's coalition partnerships, interagency partnerships, COCOM partnerships, service partnerships, long partnership, our DIA teammates know, long partnership with U.S. Strategic Command. And for some of you who may not be as familiar with U.S. Strategic Command, in 2019, we moved into a brand new multi-million-dollar headquarters building that was purpose-built for command and control. And we moved into that, and our DIA teammates were with us there every step of the way. We would not be in the headquarters today if it wasn't for that partnership. By the way, we moved in after a catastrophic flood that destroyed 60% of the base. And our C4 IT systems were so good that other organizations that we support didn't realize we'd had a catastrophic flood. That's how resilient we are. So continuing that strong partnership with our intelligence community teammates, looking forward to the improvements in JWICs and those types of things, and continuing to work as a team to get past some of these technical challenges and leveraging AI to get there in the future together and getting to yes.
Thank you.
All right, first I want to thank EP for hiring Mark, so now I have an asset and a partnership at DIA. And by saying EP, I think I checked all of General Reed's top 10, so I finished that part off. I'll leave with a challenge to industry. Understand, I'll walk the floor and I'll go see everything, and everyone has an answer to a problem that I didn't know I had. Listen to your customer. When I go over, I spend most of my time with my J4, my 5, my 7, my 3, the 2, to understand what they actually need so they can give them what they're asking for instead of doing something different. Some of these, my guys over here are gonna laugh, but I'm gonna use the pancake analogy. Our engineers are great. I love engineers. They give us everything. But if I ask for pancakes and I go to 15 different engineers, I'm gonna get 15 different ways to make a pancake. I'm gonna get, some of them are gonna give me ingredients, some are gonna say, hey, what you really wanted was a waffle. And then I'll get another one that says, hey, he really wants breakfast, so he's gonna give me some bacon and eggs. What I really asked for was the pancakes, and now just give me that. Don't build all the bells and whistles on top of it and charge me X more dollars for it. Get with your customer, understand what they actually want, and build their answer to that requirement. Thank you.
I think over the last day and a half, and as I walk through the booths and get an opportunity to speak with some of the industry partners, I see opportunities. And I think that's one of the things we need to look at in the current environment, bringing commercial solutions to solve government's wicked problems as well as our nuisance problems is easier now than it's been in years. And so it's figuring out the right way to do that, to get into the process, to understand what your unique value proposition is to the warfighter so that we can get to that next step. And so as we look to deliver that battlefield lethality, how do we do that effectively with our commercial partners?
Yeah, and for me it's change, right? We're at a crossroad, changes here, so there's three things, right? Change happens. Number two is you got to accept it, and we got to figure out how to make that positive and innovate and get after the things we need to get after. And then I'd just say, and we haven't talked a lot about it on this panel, but when you have change, take care of those people, right? The people, some are going to be resistant, some are going to embrace it, but your people that are working for us and with us are the ones that are going to actually implement the change. All right, so my distinguished panel, where's my MC at? Have my MC come up so everybody doesn't run off. Come on up. I just want to thank you all again for the discussion. Hopefully the audience enjoyed. There were some challenges thrown out, some tasks for me. Thank you very much. But I really do appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your thoughts and your vision and what you're working on with everybody. So on behalf of EP and DIA, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ziccola and panel. At this time, we are now heading into a lunch break followed by afternoon breakout sessions. Please take this time to visit the impressive exhibit hall and return by 12:45 for impressive breakout sessions on the first floor.